this spring, back in June, I planted some corn, and then at a point when I thought it was starting to grow sufficiently at about 6 inches, I started to give it fertilizer with some food coloring. I wanted to see if the food coloring was going to be absorbed and if I was able to chase some of these arteries that run through the corn. So I'm just opening it up now. I opened one up over there and didn't actually find any coloring that had been absorbed, so I'm going to try again right here with this one. Now, one of the things that I had done was I put it in only a section of the corn, and so I went out in a rush forgetting about that fact that it was only a certain area, and I may have accidentally grabbed the wrong corn. So I'm going to check to see if there's any signs of food coloring anywhere in here. I could chase down, but food coloring isn't really necessary to see the arteries running through the corn. You can see it when you slice it open at a large area near the base. Now, if you look in here, you can see. So this is the pulp inside the corn. Now right here you have the nodes. So these nodes, you can see, are denser and thicker. So one of the things about corn and trees and how they grow is they use thermodynamics. So the sun comes up in the morning and it creates heat at the top. This creates something called a thermosiphon, where it starts to draw up the moisture. As it draws up the moisture, the sugars get created along the way and take it up to the top of the plant. Now, at the end of the day is what you can see here. So this part here is the internodal stretch. On a really good day, nice sunny day, this can grow a good length. On days when it's kind of cloudy, it will be shorter. The growths will be shorter between the nodes. So these dynamics will play themselves out in various ways throughout the whole season. Now, at the end of a day, you can see this part here would be underground. So at the end of the day, when the sun goes away, the thermosiphon ends. The moisture starts to go back down. As the moisture goes back down, it has tons of oxygen. Pure oxygen comes down through, and when it gets to the nodes are denser and will retain more heat. So the oxygen will fasten itself there and also into the membrane that is right there, and then click. Right at midnight, the transition will occur from one state to another, or the end of one little universe, and then boom, the start of the next day. The next day the growth will happen, and this will be in the ground. Now, as the thermosiphon ends and it gets to the ground, this is the hottest place because the ground is dark and it'll always retain more heat. So when it retains more heat, most of the oxygen gets deposited there to the ground and gives all the nutrients and everything and sends it down to the roots. Then again, the next day, the next cycle starts. Boom, the same thing again. Now this is the same thing that happens in trees also. As the moisture drops at the end of the day, it comes down and it rests, deposits itself, all of the oxygen along these nodes. But the bulk of it goes down into the root system. So now I'd like to talk a little bit actually about where grass becomes a tree, and then where they use part of a tree to become an insect, the relationship between grass, tree, and insect. So the first place we'll start is at trees. The willow tree is the first tree that I see that's like grass. It has so many nodes in it, like grass, that it can be used as a rooting hormone. So this tree that is actually a grass, or a very close relative, is the thing that you use for making rooting hormone for starting many other plants. It's also what they use for many medicines, especially aspirin and a few other things also. So it's grass that turns into a tree also has a few other things that are significant about it. There's a fly that tag its DNA on the bud of these willow trees. Now, these willow trees will produce a cocoon that looks like a coniferous cone off of a coniferous tree. But these are actually cocoons. So now the insect, this little fly, and I don't really know the name of it, I did research it and remembered all that stuff, but you can just research it and you'll see this. So this little fly tags the exact tree that's used for making rooting hormone with its own DNA, and it creates a cocoon. The leaves of this look like the leaves of the tree, of the willow tree, so they look a little bit different than a cone. But in there we'll have all of the sugars necessary for the little worm inside to develop. The DNA will be the same as the mother. And so this is exactly how that particular thing works. So one of the other things I looked at for the crossover was to see where reptiles crossed over with mammals. Now I only found one place, only one creature on the whole planet that I know of. But I'm sure if there's one, there's got to be three. Things always will be in threes, groups of threes. These are very sound. It makes a triangle, and they should stick together properly. The one place that I've seen where a reptile crosses with a mammal is in the platypus. There's 3 different kinds of platypus, I believe, but they're the only ones that I know of that will produce eggs, but they are mammals. So there's the crossover to there. Now, a lot of the things I was talking about tagging with DNA before, this is also evident in dogs and deer and all of the other creatures that have great scent. So what we'll do is talk about the apex dog, and this particular dog is the bloodhound. One of the reasons it can pick up scent so well is because of the saliva and all of the humidity that's around it. Its ears are flopping and they're just a drooling mess. So let's pretend that somebody's been kidnapped and they've been taken away, even in an automobile. Now the individual that's been kidnapped will be under stress, an awful lot like an animal that's been wounded. So wolves will home in on this. Certain odors put out a hormone of an animal being in distress. The person that's been kidnapped also will be putting out this, and they will be, if they've been taken into an automobile, it will come out of the ventilation exhaust. But the DNA of the individual that has done the kidnapping is leaving his trail everywhere, with his automobile and with his clothing and with the shoes that he tied that morning, and sitting down on his own couch and in his car. Now the dogs can sense this, and they can smell it right along the highway. Then off they go into the bush somewhere. Again, people walking through, and again this individual has been kidnapped, is distressed, and the dog homes in on that. Now this DNA from the person in distress and the DNA from the person that's done the kidnapping will all be melding, and in the air the vapors and the oils will be trapped by the DNA of the saliva and the mist and the sweat around the dog. Now when it tags it, it sucks it in. It goes in, and in deer you can see a foil which creates a cyclone effect. It goes into 2 sinuses, and then it further compresses it, like an air gun compresses urethane when you're spraying it, and atomizes it. When it atomizes it, it makes it even smaller, so now it's tagged with the dog's DNA. It's tagged with the kidnapped victim's DNA and the perpetrator. Now it gets compressed, and it hits the fine little receptors on the membrane right at the back of the sinus cavity. Now this membrane has all of these little tags on it, and when the animal sucks in and then blows out, it tags the front of these things, and it tags the back of it and all around it. And this ensures that it gets a full scent. Again, it's been tagged with its own DNA, and it's sure to absorb it. Pretty simple.